thing I get a lot of questions about is radon. What is it? Where does it come from? What does it do to me? Can I get rid of it? So I thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about it today. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas that's created by products of decay from the uranium in the ground. It's odorless, invisible, colorless, tasteless. You have no idea if you're breathing it in or not. It doesn't have any immediate effect to you. The problem is the long-term exposure causes lung cancer. It's a carcinogen. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer in the US, actually. There's radon outside, but once it gets into the air, it dissipates so quickly, it doesn't have any negative effects. Where it can hurt you is when it builds up inside buildings, homes, businesses, daycare, schools, things like that. Colorado is a very high radon state. There are places in the southern parts of the US that don't have radon to speak of at all. So some people that move here, they're like, what is this radon stuff and why should I care? So especially in Colorado, it's very important to test because you really need to know if you need to take steps to prevent it from building up inside your house. The way radon gets into your home is through cracks, gaps, separations in the foundation wall, the concrete slab in your basement. If you have a crawl space with exposed dirt, that's how it can get in. And what causes that movement of the radon is pressure. It moves from high pressure to low, meaning there's higher pressure below the slab in your basement than inside your home, so that forces the radon into your house. How do you fix that? You reverse the pressure. The way you do that is with a radon mitigation system. Most of the time, they're active soil depressurization systems, ASD systems. They cut a hole in your slab, in your concrete slab. They put a pipe in there. That pipe goes outside the house. There's a fan attached to it that pulls air from below the slab, exhaust it usually above your roof line. If you have a crawl space with open dirt, they will put a nice vapor barrier in there, seal it so there's no gaps, and put that pipe below that vapor barrier. And what both of those systems do is they reverse the pressure. Now it's low pressure to high, the radon stays out of your house. Another variation on those two same systems is if you have a sump pit in your basement that's already got a perimeter drain, so it's already connected below ground. So what they will do, instead of drilling a hole in your slab, they will actually pull air from that sump pit and exhaust it the same way, and then they will put a plastic cover on top of that sump pit that has to remain sealed, because that's how they're pulling the radon out and flipping that pressure from high to low. When you have a mitigation system installed, the fan will be outside or in the garage potentially. One thing you just have to keep in mind, you can't have a radon fan below a livable space. You can't have the fan inside your basement. You can't have the fan inside your garage if there's a bedroom above the garage. It has to be outside. And when it comes to the pipe that goes out, it doesn't have to vent above the roof line, but it can't vent within 10 feet of any opening in the wall, like a window or a combustion air intake or attic ventilation or anything like that. So it has to vent not near an opening. Most of the time it goes above the roof. Now that we've talked about what radon is and where it comes from and what it can do to you and how to get rid of it, we need to talk about levels, acceptable levels, and testing. In the US, radon is measured in picocuries per liter. Curie, actually, the root of that word is named after Madame Curie, who discovered radium. Just not that important, but kind of interesting. 4 picocuries per liter, according to the EPA, is considered high. So 3.9 or below is considered acceptable. 4 and above is considered high. However, the EPA recently has said, but if it's between 2 and 4, you should also consider putting in mitigation. There's no safe level of radon. It's like there's no safe level of smoking cigarettes. The ambient level outside, like you're walking downtown Denver, you're just walking around, you're breathing in 0.4 picocuries per liter. That's considered okay because there's nothing we can do about that. But you get to that 2 to 4, you probably should consider it. 4 or above, you should always mitigate. I did a house, a 2-year-old house that was 23 in the basement. I've seen 40 with my own eyes, and I've even heard of 160. Your house has 160. They had to mitigate multiple times and figure out the best way to do it, but you may as well be chain smoking at that point. Because you can equate a certain level of radon with smoking with a certain number of cigarettes. So how do you figure out what your level is? There's a lot of different ways to test. There's charcoal testing and electric ion detectors. What I use and what most real estate professionals use are continuous radon monitors. It's a little device I put in your basement. It records radon for 48 hours. 46 hours is the minimum test, but 48 hours is good. That's considered a short-term test. There are up to 6-month and 12-month radon tests as well. But for real estate transactions, you got to be quick. So 48 hours, it takes readings, then it gives you an average. You want that average to be below 4 picocuries per liter. I did a house yesterday. It has radon mitigation, and I tested it, and the 48-hour average was 3. And I looked at the realtor. I've known her for years. She was like, doesn't that seem high? I'm like, it does. To have a mitigation system, you want it as low as possible because the high of those averages was over 5. So they're considering adjusting that radon mitigation system. Another thing that people ask a lot about is when you should test for radon. If there's mitigation installed, you know there was high radon there at some point, you should test every 2 years just to make sure it's working, make sure there's no issues. If it's low, if you test your house and it's low, the EPA says to test every 5 years. That way you kind of keep an eye on what's going on. If you do a lot of remodeling, you finish the basement, you're opening up floors in the basement, you're changing the footprint of your house. Any construction like that, you should retest because that can create pressure changes. Post mitigation. Once you mitigate your home, you must test. A mitigation system installation is not complete until you retest. You have to wait at least 24 hours after the mitigation is installed, but do it within 30 days. A few months ago, I did a house. It was 5.9 picocuries per liter before mitigation. It was 6.1 after. There was an issue with the vapor barrier. So it did no good. Not only did it not do any good, it went up. So you always have to test post-mitigation. What most of us talk about in the real estate business is real estate transactions. In my opinion, you should test virtually every real estate transaction. People say, oh, there's radon mitigation, must be fine. If there's radon mitigation, I can guarantee you there was a radon issue at that house. Always test. And we do short-term tests. We do 48 hours. We can knock that out. We drop it off. It takes readings for 48 hours. You get the results right away. The problem is, if you don't test, you just don't know. I did one maybe 3 months ago. Radon mitigation system installed, 8.9. The mitigation system wasn't working. Nobody knew. Nobody knew how long it wasn't working. So it's always best just to test. The only time you don't really have to test, in my opinion, is say you're buying a house and they had a mitigation system put in a year ago and they tested it and they can show you the results. Then you're fine. Then test in a year. The other thing that's interesting now in the state of Colorado, you have to be state certified to test for radon. I am state certified. So there's a lot of home inspectors out there who are no longer certified. Make sure your inspector is certified to test for radon in the state of Colorado. I'm also NRPP certified, which is the National Radon Proficiency Program. Have to take tests and verify that you know how to use the machines you use, all those kind of things. So it's always a good idea. And again, usually costs about $150. It's a really good idea to do it because then at least you know going in if you have an issue and how to deal with it. The last thing I'm going to talk about real quick is the conditions during a test. Now this will go for you if you're buying a house or if you're selling your house and somebody wants to do a radon test. The biggest thing is closed home conditions must be maintained. Closed home conditions are windows, doors closed, except for in normal entry. It's not like you can't go in your house. Don't open a window and leave it open all the time. Some people think, oh, well, I'll just put my bedroom window. It's on the second floor. It doesn't matter. It does. It can change the pressure inside the house. The best radon test is in a house that's completely closed. But again, in and out is completely fine. You want to use your vent hood while you're cooking. That's fine. Use your dryer. That's fine. Don't use your swamp cooler, your evaporative cooler, because that pulls in air from the outside. And that can change those readings. Don't use any big ventilation fans. Fireplaces, it's best just not to use those. And it's only a 48-hour test, so it's not too long. One thing I love about the continuous radon monitors that I use, and a lot of professionals are starting to use, I use the Airthings Carentium Pro. They're really great. They're really easy to use. They're very small. They kind of just sit in the corner and do their thing. But if somebody tampers with it, it'll tell me. If somebody moves it, if somebody puts a fan in front of it that just blows air to keep radon out, tries to mess with it at all, it will tell me. And I love that part of it. But as a licensed radon professional, I leave paperwork on the kitchen counter that says, here's the things that you have to do. Don't do this, don't do this. I have to put a hanger on the door that for anybody that walks in, it says, there's a radon test going on right now. Do not leave the doors and windows open. So that's just the best way to get the most accurate reading. So just to sum up, you don't want radon in your house. There's no acceptable level. There's no safe level. There's acceptable levels. You want it as low as possible. It is a carcinogen, so you want to make sure that as much radon is out of your house as possible, and just test. So many people, if you're spending 800 grand on a house, you don't want to spend 150 on a radon test. I understand you're paying everybody all the time when you're buying a house. But for your safety and the safety of your parents and kids and anybody who might be living with you, especially in that basement, you want to make sure to test to find out what kind of danger your house might have.